Hello everyone, and welcome to another segment of Big Sky Sounds. My name is Mario Lopez, and I am the John W. and Carol L.H. Green CEO of the Billings Symphony. And today's episode, we're talking about our upcoming concert titled Revolutionary Voices on Saturday, the 21st, 7:30 p.m. at the Alberta Bear Theater. And I am joined by some of the most distinguished guests, our guest conductor for the week, along with our guest soloist for the week, Michelle Merrill and Alessio Bax. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have you in Montana.
Yes.
How's your experience in Billings been thus far?
It's been cold. I don't think I had been this cold, but we had just been having lots of snow all in parts in the other part of the country, so it's just following me wherever I go. And actually it was snowing when I came out of the first rehearsal, which was really quite beautiful. One of the musicians offered to drive me, and I said, oh no, I'll walk back. It's beautiful. I love the snow.
Wonderful. And Alessio just arrived last night?
Late last night, so I didn't have much of an experience yet, but I'm looking forward to this next couple of days. I had a wonderful coffee this morning, so I'm in a good mood, and so my friend Michelle, after many years, I'm very excited for the week.
That's right. So you both have known each other because you both went to the same school.
We did, SMU in Dallas, but we've never had a chance to work together, so this is really exciting.
This is going to be really fantastic. So Revolutionary Voices, the title, the composers. Tell us a little bit about our main symphony, Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony,
Yes.
in this program lineup.
Yes, so Shostakovich 5, it's one of the world's most played of the Shostakovich symphonies, but also just one of the most beloved symphonies. It's incredibly emotional, and this is partly just because of what's going on in Shostakovich's life. He's dealing with fallout from being described as muddle, not music, and so this is his reaction to what he calls just criticism. There's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek there, and it goes through these emotions of having to sit on his staircase so his family wouldn't see him be arrested in the case that he was. And there's this almost scared terror that is over the whole thing, but also some joking. In the second movement, you get basically like a circus waltz and a parody of these things. It's really fun and silly and wonky, because Shostakovich was kind of the John Williams of Russia, or Soviet, I should say, because he wrote for so many films. And so he brings that in, but he also brings, in the first movement, and especially the third movement, just this painstaking, slow lines, almost this wailing, if you will, and almost a prayer and sadness. But then he ends the symphony with this great, what would be a triumph, but at the same time, those that he was performing it for, that knew his music, would have also known that it was a little bit of a resistance to the powers that be, and kind of a standing up to Stalin and that administration.
As a potential first-time concert goer, what are they getting themselves into when they get to listen to this really powerful work, but with just such nuance of
Yes.
Pain or suffering or anger, lament? You know, how can someone sort of set themselves up to really understand what's being played through these instruments?
Well, and I think it draws you in because of all of these emotions that you go through. And it starts out with kind of these ta-da, ta-da, which is actually harkening back to Beethoven in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, where he's using that same motive, ta-da, 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 ta-da. So you get drawn in immediately, and then you just have these soundscapes of very slow-moving string lines, but then incredibly fast-moving articulations, and the brass are going wild, and the timpani's going wild, and the percussion are going wild. So it's very exciting music, at the same time having that very tender, heartfelt moments throughout the whole piece. So it's definitely one that is completely entertaining from start to finish.
And you mentioned a little bit of Beethoven, so before we get to the
Yes.
final portion of the concert, we will be performing Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto with the amazing Alessio Bax. And so, Alessio, as a pianist, you know, what does this piece mean to you as a musician, and how do you prepare to give the performance of the lifetime?
Yeah, you know, the 5 Beethoven concerti are, each one is a universe on its own. They're quite different from one another. They're very personal. This is, for me, is the most significant in a way that it really changes the genre of piano concerti. It is a symphony with piano. The scope is immense. There's so much drama. There's not an extra note that's just flourish or embellishment. Every single note is part of the drama. And it was perhaps inspired, there are links to Mozart K491, the C minor. And then it definitely inspired Brahms' first piano concerto. So I don't think the Brahms' first piano concerto could have happened without this piece. And it's a wonderful feeling playing it, because you're really feeling on a good performance that you're navigating through a structure. Very dramatic and very beautiful, but it's almost as if you're walking in 3D through a whole little world, which is quite extraordinary. First movement is incredibly dramatic. I think it kind of probably started Beethoven's thinking of his Fifth Symphony in the key of C minor, which was very significant for Beethoven. And then the second movement in the very far away key of E major, which is, it's almost as if Beethoven shifts the sense of gravity and goes to a parallel universe in this incredible, and then really kind of earthy and fun. Only like Beethoven could be fun and dramatic at the same time. Last movement that ends in a glorious C major that doesn't feel like a surprise. It feels like you've gone through so much, you deserve to be in C major by the end.
as a reward.
Yeah.
As a conductor, leading the Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto, what are you most excited about? Outside of working with Alessio, of course, what is so exciting about the piece and putting this masterwork together?
I think it is the collaboration between the orchestra and the piano, because it is, like Alessio said, kind of like this symphony in its own world. And for this particular one, you know, it's that change of not only just piano concerti, but Beethoven style in general. So this is coming on a concert that it was premiered on the same concert that the Second Symphony was premiered, and it's before he's written the Third Symphony. He's looking forward to the Fifth Symphony, which is also in C minor and ends in C major. But it's just kind of this great little time capsule of what is happening in the compositional world, and just going through all of that. Again, that whole soundscape, all of the emotions within it. I mean, the last movement, Rondo, ends in this crazy 6/8 time, and she's like, where did that come from? What made him think to do that? It's incredibly surprising, and I can't even imagine what it must have been like for listeners back then when they heard it for the first time. Just shocking in its own way.
That's a wonderful perspective. Revolutionary voices. You know, I think most people have heard of Beethoven, and we just, you know, praise Beethoven for everything he's done and how he's just really living music. No matter what year it is, you know, you always go back to these Beethoven works, and they're just so amazing in their own way. But there's Shostakovich, revolutionary. Tell us a little bit about how they're both revolutionary voices in this program.
Well, for me, again, Shostakovich, he was working on his Fourth Symphony. It was about to premiere, and then he had just had this opera, Lady Macbeth, and it had been a giant success. 2 years, everyone was playing it, international, everyone loved it. And then Stalin went to a performance, decided he hated it, and something came out in the paper there, the Pravda, that basically just said it was muddle, not music, and his life changed overnight. So he had to completely, I wouldn't say reinvent himself, but he had to shift course. Pulled the premiere of the Fourth Symphony, started working on this Fifth Symphony, actually wrote some other songs that he tabled, and one of those songs is called Rebirth, and it's about just the covering up of a beautiful painting by this barbarian who decides to change it and turn it into something else. And then after years, those painting flecks start to fall off, and you see the beauty underneath. And this piece for voice and orchestra, or piano, is actually embedded into the final movement of the Shostakovich. And so he's hiding it there, even though no one would have known at the time. But later on, we found out that this little quote is actually in there. And it's so beautiful to think that even in the face of being sent away to Siberia, he's still putting this in his music so that people that know and want to have hope, have that. The third movement is all really an ode to Orthodox funeral music, which would have been not allowed at that time, but anyone that was in the Russian Orthodox Church would have known exactly what this meant. So it's almost this requiem for those that had fallen and those that had died under this horrible time that they were all living in of terror.
Huh. Well, and amongst these two revolutionary voices, these two revolutionary composers, we start the program with living composer Jared Miller with his piece Luster. And earlier in this segment, you mentioned about the experience and excitement of what was it like listening to Mozart's First Symphony, Beethoven's First Symphony, or Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto, Fourth Piano Concerto? You know, at one point in time, all music was new music. Mm-hmm. And so there is this huge duty of symphonies and artists to bring out these new voices, the voices of today and the voices of tomorrow. So Jared Miller, tell us a little bit about how you know Jared, and tell us about his piece Luster.
Sure. So I met Jared my last year in Detroit. I was the associate conductor under Leonard Slacken, and he decided he wanted to commission 6 new pieces, might have been 7, but not by composers he knew, but rather by composers he knew, their students. And so he had each composer. This was John Carigliano's student, Jared Miller. He wrote this piece, premiered by the Detroit Symphony, and I just fell in love with it and fell in love with him, because his use of color and the way, our sound engineer last night for these concerts said, I thought something was amplified. And I realized, no, it's not. And it's not. It's all based on electronic dance music. And so you get the flute starting, and it sounds like there's a delay effect, but it's not. It's just the way first flute starts, then second flute a little later, and then piccolo after that. And it creates this incredible effect where you hear colors and sounds and kind of tonal shifts that you have not heard out of a symphony orchestra before. And I think that's what's so incredibly powerful about it, is you get these really beautiful tone colors, but you also get kind of, it's kind of, you know, jumping and bumping a little bit, and you get the floor that falls out from underneath you. And then, as I was joking last night in rehearsal, you get these great kind of big boom, which is a little bit Hans Zimmer-esque from Inception. That film score changed all film scores for time to come. And but you get that a little bit in this. But then the final few minutes of the piece are just, again, very, very intimate and kind of the most beautiful, where you get these lush string sounds over kind of vibraphone and pizzicato strings, kind of playing this recurring motive. And I love the piece. It's probably my 4th or 5th time to do it, and I love bringing it to places, because a lot of times in the audience you just hear after like, wow, because they haven't heard anything like that before, and it's really quite lovely.
Alessio, talking about, you know, new music and new voices, new composers, you know, as a, you know, we're all musicians, but as an instrumentalist, what's your take on the duty of a musician and how we can amplify these amazing voices like Jared Miller, but there are some prominent living composers, a lot that we currently know. We have Jennifer Higdon, Jesse Montgomery. So there are some really big names currently that people know, but then there are some that are not as well known, but with truly amazing compositions. What's your feeling about, you know, what's going on in today's world, in today's compositions?
I think it's incredibly important for us to support this, and it's so wonderful and heartwarming to hear what Slatkin was doing, not commissioning, you know, just the famous composers, but their students. And even more heartwarming and impressive is that Michelle just said she's done this piece 4 times, because very often you get a premiere and then the piece goes away, and that's, I think it's a crime. A second performance in a way is even more important than a third and a fourth performance, so that we don't think of new music as a separate entity. Or something that we have absolutely to push. I mean, it has to be considered music, like when Beethoven wrote this concerti. And then time will tell, you know, what is here to stay for centuries to come, and what is not, and what people will like. That's not up to us. But I think it's a duty to champion composers that speak to us as musicians. and each one has a different taste. You know, she might like things that I don't, that I cannot identify with or cannot understand. But it's important that to give performances that are 100% committed, not just to do it because it's a duty. So it's a balancing act, but I think a very necessary one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a really important point, that we don't always are inspired by the same thing. We don't always like the same thing, and that is okay. I think in music, we go to a restaurant, we all pick different things. Nobody says, oh, I can't believe you got that, I hate that. They just said, oh, you really like that. Or maybe you try something for the very first time, and you realize, wow, I really love this, and I thought I would hate that. And I think music is the same, is you can get such a wide variety. And I think if you let yourself be open, you might actually be surprised by what is inspiring to you and what you go away with. And if anything, what we hope, I think, as artists, is that you see the passion that's coming out from on stage, and you find something that you can talk about with your neighbor afterward, whether it's, my gosh, that piece was amazing, or, I wasn't really sure about that. You have an opinion about it, because that's what art is. We should have conversations and be able to discuss the things we love.
Everybody loves something different.
Yes.
And as a symphony, as you both well know, our job is to educate. We want to elevate these voices that have changed the music world forever, but we also want to elevate these new voices, the music of tomorrow. And some of these composers are maybe a little bit ahead of their times. One of my favorite stories about The Rite of Spring, when it debuted, they got booed off the stage. Completely booed off the stage, and now it's like, oh my gosh, Rite of Spring! Like, this is amazing. It's a staple. It's a classic, right?
Or even something like Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. There are reviews of it that are saying, "What is this music? The composer's full of himself." I mean, it's scathing, and it's one of the most famous violin concertos in the world, beloved by almost everyone. And it's just so funny and interesting to see how music evolves like that. And sometimes it's just the exposure. We're scared of things we don't know a lot of times. And I think if we're open to seeing what and hearing what can be possible, you can find some really revolutionary ideas.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been such a treat for me to be here with both of you. We are beyond grateful to have you come to Billings and really impact our community with your amazing, with your vision, with your talents. We're just beyond grateful. Billings is such a growing community, and we love when people come and just show us all what they got. As we continue with the season, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary season. This is why we have distinguished guests, because we're doing everything big this season, and both of you are not an exception to this year. We are very excited. Join us in March 28th, where we'll be revealing the full lineup of next season as we are entering our music director search, and come and listen to Time for Three. And then join us again on April, where Ann Harrigan, our music director for 20 years, will be conducting her final main stage performance with the Verdi's Requiem. Our wonderful Billings Symphony Chorale will join us on the main stage, and it's going to be a concert to not be missed. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you on the stage.